Welcome to the Inbound Back Office Podcast, where we chat with smart agency owners about agency challenges. I'm Holly Reed, strategist at Inbound Back Office, plug and play back office support for your marketing agency. Today on the show, I have the pleasure of welcoming Alara Vural, CEO of Alara Vural Coaching Ltd, to talk about messaging for cutting-edge technology companies. Welcome, Alara.
Hello, nice. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to have you on. Before we dive into the topic, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I work with businesses who have something groundbreaking to offer, and oftentimes that is cutting-edge technology businesses, but it's also consultancies, it's also service-based businesses. But yeah, have something actually incredibly valuable to offer, but when it comes to talking about it, they get misunderstood a lot. They either confuse people, people understand what they do but just don't get excited about it as much as they should, or they don't remember it. They just you sound like everyone else, and so they kind of put you in a box and you get really commoditized. So my job is to equip them with a way of talking about what they do, a fundamental way of talking about what they do or communicating what they do in a way that does justice to the groundbreakingness of their solution, and that moves people to action, that they can then go on to roll that out in all of their communication.
That's awesome. I mean, it is so true that people get really excited about their own product or their own service. And a lot of the times people have a really either interesting way of doing something that's been done before, but in a new way, or they have a groundbreaking product, especially with technology companies, but they can't get out of that tech space and figure out how to communicate it, or they can't get out of their own business, figure out how to communicate it. And we see that all the time.
It's so crazy because, I used to work with quite a lot of early stage startups and agency owners, and kind of you can really see the passion in their eyes, like it's kind of oozing out of them. And really, it's kind of, to begin with, at the early stage, when the founder is in the room with whoever they're talking to, even if they're not doing a great job at communicating what they're doing, the passion that it's oozing out of them, that it's kind of contagious, and people kind of get on board with that. But you can't scale that. Like you can't, just clone the founder and just get them to be really passionate in everything. So, when you get to a point where you actually need to scale up your business, or you need to grow, or you need to enter into a new market, or maybe like you're pivoting, you're rebranding, you're going to need a message that resonates with people, regardless of whether the founder is in the room, regardless of whether it's, a one-on-one interaction, or kind of a, maybe they're on your website, maybe they're kind of seeing you through a video, maybe it's a PR campaign. And it's that point that your message starts to become really important, and you need a way of communicating what you do that captures that buzz, that the enthusiasm that people get on board with when you're in those first few months of your business, first few years of your business. So yeah, I really love what I do. I get to work with people that are really passionate and are really, like you said, they're either got something that's pretty groundbreaking, or the way they're going about doing something that already exists is pretty groundbreaking. But either way, it's incredibly fulfilling, kind of getting them seen and acknowledged for actually the difference that they're making in the world.
Yeah. So how do you, what are some of the first steps you do? Like when you go work with these clients, or they find you, you find them, and you see that passion, how do you help them kind of disseminate that through their company and through their messaging? What are some of the steps you do for that?
Yeah. So first of all, let me just define what the aim is. Like, what are we actually trying to achieve? Because there's a lot of buzz out there of like, oh yeah, improve your messaging, talk about your lead with the benefits, not the features. There's a lot of kind of tips out there, and it can kind of get overwhelming. So I want to set like a really clear, what does good messaging actually mean? Like, what do we mean by that? And what is the benchmark? So what we're trying to create, the aim out of when working on your messaging, is to find a central narrative, a central story that you don't change depending on your collateral. Like that becomes a story that's on your website, that becomes a story that your salespeople use, that becomes a story that's in your elevator pitch. You can kind of shrink it or expand it, but that there is a certain series, a flow of I call them aha moments, like kind of light bulb moments, and that flow stays the same. You can expand it and kind of add a bit more meat to it, or you can shrink it so you're just going aha moment, aha moment, aha moment. But it's a flow, that a core flow that you then use, you roll out to all your collateral. Now there's 3 criteria that we're looking at when we say good messaging. Number 1, it needs to be, I don't even want to say clear. I want to say like impossible to misunderstand. Like it's something that people say, oh, okay, I kind of get what you do. So you're a little bit like this company. Like when someone's like, I kind of get what you do, it means you'll probably have a polite conversation, but it's not going to end up in anywhere where they're taking action, right? It needs to be so impossible to misunderstand that they're kind of having light bulb moments, getting excited and getting like, oh my God, and I can see you working with that, and I love that. You know, it should be that energy that you're getting them to. Number 2, you want to position yourself as more than a commodity, a message that moves people emotionally. Like I don't care how kind of boring or commoditized you think your work might be, and I don't think anyone's work is actually boring or commoditized, but there is an emotion, an underlying emotion that you're really selling, and kind of being able to tap into that. So what is the underlying emotional need that I'm meeting with my work? Getting clear on that and speaking to that in your message. And number 3, bringing that all into a story flow, a narrative that is simple, that's intuitive, that people can remember, and most importantly, talk about to other people so they can kind of go to their board members. And so long answer to your question, that is kind of the standard that we're aiming for when I say a core message. In terms of how do you actually achieve that?
That's the tricky part, right? Like,
So let me just give you I'll give you the kind of the steps, the framework, the 5 main steps that you need to achieve that, and you can dive into any of those as you see fit.
Perfect.
So there's 5 key steps to achieving this. I do it through kind of a 6 to 7 week kind of intensive program, but ultimately it's the steps that matter. So number 1, you need to find a way of speaking to the emotions of your audience, right? So this is the emotional connection part. Before you even start talking about the rest of your message or untangling, what do we do and how do we do it and all the technology behind it, or kind of all the services behind it, it's kind of this is a really simple but also kind of the hardest step to do. What is the subconscious need that we're meeting? What is really the emotion that we're gifting to people? So yes, my work is messaging, I'm helping you with your messaging, but the emotion that I'm really meeting is helping you feel seen, helping you feel acknowledged, helping you feel celebrated for the groundbreaking work that you're doing. And obviously that comes with the money, that comes with the the business, etc. But the emotion that I'm selling is a feeling of being seen. And so there's you can articulate that by actually interviewing your clients, asking them like, what if we didn't exist, what would you have done, and kind of probing them with questions that kind of starts to get them talking about the emotions rather than the logical aspect. Right. And then also I don't know if your audience is familiar with Simon Sinek, but kind of doing a why discovery session where you're actually articulating what are the emotions that drives you to show up to work every day. Like, what is it about, out of all the work, businesses that you could have set up, out of all the businesses that you could be working for, like what is it about this business? Like, so kind of just actually doing a bit of self-inquiry about what really is the emotion that I'm passionate about gifting to the world in my business.
Yeah, that's really good.
So that's step number 1, right? Getting clear on the emotion.
And I think, even earlier you said, like the first step about getting clear, you're like, I don't even want to say get clear, but be impossible to be misunderstood, right? And I thought that was such a good clarification, because a lot of us, we've heard that like, get clear, get clear, get clear. And it's like, you can think you're clear, but people can still misunderstand what you're saying. So I love that you kind of flipped that and brought that out of like, just be impossible to be misunderstood. Like in that, if you can think of it in that way, it's like, okay, so if people are misunderstanding me, it's not clear, obviously. Right. And same with the emotion side. So in this first step, in this part, you have to get really clear, right, for yourself and with your clients. And the only way to do that is to understand them and understand yourself. And a lot of times I think as agency owners or as business owners, and here's where agency owners have to really step in on this, is companies typically don't understand their clients super well, right? And some that do, there's still room for improvement, right? So it's like, are you misunderstanding why your clients are actually purchasing from you? Whether it's, on a e-commerce shop or a service-based business or whatever, do you actually understand why people purchase from you? Because the reasons that people stick around may be very different than the reasons you think they stick around.
It's so interesting. I mean, we talk to clients maybe kind of from a feedback perspective after we work with them, but actually just interviewing them while you're working with them, saying like, what was the pain that you're experiencing that made it even relevant for you to consider working with us? Like asking that, and like getting them to describe life before you, and getting them to describe kind of like, okay, so now that you've been working with us for a little while, what has been the changes that you've experienced within your business and within yourself? I know we haven't achieved the final result, the final outcome yet.
Yeah.
What is kind of the gift you feel that working with us is starting to bring? This, it's actually, I've had some clients that have described this as like the most eye-opening part of the process, because you actually get to hear your clients talk about your business, not from a feedback perspective, but from actually sharing, being vulnerable perspective. And it doesn't have to be very long. It's like a 10-minute conversation.
Right.
Recently, I was working with a marketing agency, and they ran these interviews with their clients, was completely blown away by just kind of hearing their clients talk about them. But what was really interesting was, marketing, you would assume that what you're selling is growth, and you grow, and that's that, right? That's the emotion that you're selling. But what was really interesting was kind of the emotion that the clients were describing was, yes, we're growing, but we could have already done that, because it's marketing managers that they're selling to, right? So the marketing managers are already started, they kind of know what to do, but they need help, right? So actually what they were hiring was the certainty that they were on the right track. The certainty that I think this is what we need to be doing, but also like we could be doing this. And so they brought in an external marketing consultancy to eliminate the doubt of, am I on the right track, and kind of basically to back themselves up. And when we started speaking to that in their messaging, that's when they started to differentiate and stop sounding like every other marketing agency out there of like, we help you grow. Which was really interesting. And I think, and that doesn't mean that every marketing agency's, that's the emotion that every marketing agency it changes depending on your own audience and your own client base. So that's why it's really important to kind of speak to your own clients, and even prospects, like even if you don't directly speak to your clients, like prospects that would be an ideal client, be really helpful with them as well.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, that's such an interesting perspective. Like, oh, we hired you to eliminate our own self-doubt, right? And I mean, a lot of times that is what it is. We just, like, people need someone to tell them what to do, and that is confident and that knows what they're doing, right?
Yeah. And so their headline ended up being something along the lines of "grow without the doubt." I think previously they had a lot of they experimented a lot of different headlines of like grow efficiently, efficient, sustainable growth, But actually the growth part was almost like a given for their audience. So we the focus on the without the doubt part, and then we expanded on that without the doubt concept later on. But it's definitely just it really shapes, once you get clear on what that emotion is, it becomes the North Star for the rest of your messaging.
Yeah, I love that. So what's step number 2?
Yeah. So step number 2, once you've got the emotions kind of clear, that becomes your North Star. Step number 2 is getting clear on, okay, so what is the logical aspects of the message? So I call this your message untangling stage.
It's a messy stage.
Exactly. It sounds complicated. It's not. What it is it's one big brain dump. It's really helpful if you can get, if you can have this as a dialogue, get someone in your team or kind of, or whatever, work with a consultant. But if you're having this as a dialogue where they are asking you questions about, okay, so who do you work with? And what's the pain that they tend to experience when you work with them? Who is the human that you're really selling to? Okay, so what's the pain? What's the cause that leads them to experience that pain? What's the problem that's really underlying their pain? What will happen if they don't do anything about it? How ready are they to buy? Are they aware that they even have a pain? Are they aware? Or like, are they kind of like so ready to buy that they're actively looking for people? What do you sell? How does it, what are the best parts of what you sell? What makes you different? All of these are kind of, I call them your different chapters, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes we don't actually separate these chapters. We just kind of, it's all a big mush in our brain, and we'll just start writing a message for the website, and it's all kind of big tangled ball of wires. So this second step is about untangling the chapters of your message into these separate chapters. Because getting clear on what these different chapters are means that when it comes to turning it into a narrative, you now know what ingredients you're working with. You now know what, okay, so the story is made of, I want to start the story with really resonating and empathizing with their pain, but also kind of educating them on what really is the problem here.
Right.
Then I want to hit them with, you can't stay here, an urgency element that ties into the kind of the consequence chapter. Then I want to position ourselves as a guide by saying, this is the transformation that we offer. All of these are just chapters that you untangle
right.
in this stage. So once you are clear on your different chapters, then it becomes a Lego building exercise to actually create your story.
Absolutely.
So that's step 2.
And that's a really great way to put it, because I think people get really muddied in there, but it's like, no, this chapter is about this next chapter is about this. It makes it so simple to be able to go, okay, there's a flow to this, there's I just have to focus on this aspect in this chapter.
Yes. Yeah. And I have a template for all these different chapters that you need to untangle your message into. So I'm more than happy to give you a link to that to add into the kind of the description as well. It's basically it's called a core message map, and it's basically all the different chapters and mapped out for you, so that you know what am I actually untangling into. What are the boxes that we're looking to untangle the message into.
I love that. Okay, step number 3.
Okay, so this is a step that you get clear on what is the type of story that I need to tell. So because ultimately the outcome is we're trying to create a narrative that then gets used in all of our different collateral. But there are depending on how, one of the chapters that I was talking about was how ready are your audience to actually buy.
Right.
Are they aware of their pain? Are they kind of just about starting to become aware of it, but not really understand what's the underlying cause? Are they do they understand the underlying cause but don't know that there's a solution? Do they know that there's a solution and they're actively looking for it? Because depending on where they are in that buyer's journey will determine kind of what type of message will most be effective for your audience. So this is step number 3, is getting clear on the type of narrative that's going to be most impactful for your audience. So let's say your audience, they're not even aware of their pain, right? They're kind of just about them, they're maybe like little seedlings of it. So for example, in cybersecurity, this is a big thing, like it's a big problem, but they're not even really aware of it. Like they can kind of close their eyes and have their head in the sand and just continue living their life.
Totally.
Right. So if you have an audience like that, where they're not even facing the fact that they have a pain, you probably want to message a story that kind of, I call it the informer of a festering problem. Like you're informing them, hey, you really can't stay here, you really can't keep your head in the sand, like you need to do something about this. Expand on what that means in more detail later, but kind of it's basically this narrative is about like shaking them and saying, hey, this is not something you want to sit on, here's why. So there's a lot of there's a bit of empathy, but there's a lot of education, a lot of it can overlap with fear mongering a little bit, but what it's really doing is kind of a bit of a slap in the face of saying you can't stay here.
Right.
If your audience is they're a little bit more aware of the pain, they're not really aware of the problem yet, you might want to kind of position your story as a bit more of a, hey, look, I know you have this pain, but this is really the underlying cause, the solve it from the root narrative. So this narrative is more kind of like you're creating a trust with your audience by first empathizing with them and then saying, but it's actually, it's not just a symptom, like you need to look at this on a deeper level. So they start to say, hey, this person knows what they're talking about, because that makes sense. So you're selling them or solving it from the root. You know, if they're a little bit more, they're aware of the pain, they're aware of the problem, you know, they know what's causing it, but maybe they're just resigned to their fate because they don't believe that there's an adequate solution out there. So they're just putting band-aid solutions on. Then you might want an approach that's a little bit more, I call it the emotional warrior. You don't need to educate them. You just need to say, I get it. I get it. I get it. There's a lot of like, this shouldn't be this way. You should not have to be feeling this. And the good news is there is a solution.
Right.
Let me help you. So it's less about kind of, teaching you how to suck eggs and more about, creating that deep sense of, I'm on the same page as you. I've been there, or we've been there, or whatever. Let me help you. And then the final, type of story that you can tell is they're super ready. They're actively looking for a solution. So your narrative needs to then be in kind of like, I know you're already looking for this, and completely differentiation focused, basically. Kind of you're diving in straight with, I know you're already looking at these different solutions. Here's how we're different, which is a little bit more kind of the new pain that you're speaking to is basically what is the pain that's associated with those other solutions that you
right. I think that's a really good way to differentiate each of those stages. I don't think I've ever heard anybody quite break it down like that. That was really good. Like, here's kind of the narrative category you would use on each stage of the buyer's journey.
Yeah.
And excuse me, I think that was a really interesting way to think about it. It's like, they're here, this is how you talk to them. If they're here, this is how you talk to them. And you made it so clear. I just love that. So what's steps 4 and 5?
Yeah, so number 4 is actually, once you've picked the type of story you want to tell, telling that story. So ordering your chapters in a way that tells that story.
Right.
So that becomes, that oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes it goes something a little bit like, have a headline that speaks to that emotion that we identified in step number 1. Then have a subheadline that's like a no bullshit way of explaining, like what are we selling? Like, what is the box that you're getting? Are we a consultancy? Do we sell a product? Do we sell an app? Like, nothing fancy, nothing kind of fluffy, just just make it so mundane that it's just about like, what is the box that you're getting? Because you sold them on the excitement emotion, and then saying, and this is the box that excitement emotion comes in. But then it goes into kind of something like empathizing with their pain, a little bit of education if that's relevant for the type of narrative that you're telling, and a little bit of, you can't stay here. Then going into, this is the transformation that we provide. These are the 3 kind of superpowers that we equip you with. I call them your value pillars. And these are the different packages or kind of services or offerings or products that you can receive those kind of superpowers in, so that you get this happy ending to the story. Very, very kind of rough flow of what that flow of chapters might look like. But basically, you're ordering the chapters that you untangled in step 2 to tell the story that you decided on in step 3.
Love it.
And then step number 5 is rolling that out to every corner of your business that you can you do. And this is actually where most businesses fail. Like, they end up
with true.
Beautiful core message, and then it stays in a Google Doc somewhere, and they might update their website, and then that's it. So this is actually kind of it sounds like an easy step, but it's living and breathing this new message that you have. And I mean, yes, website, yes, things like sales decks and kind of documents or brochures that you send out, but also like the one pages, the elevator pitch that is your go-to pitch, having your salespeople and the founder and all the executives getting really comfortable with that order of that flow of aha moments that you've got in your narrative, and kind of being able to almost, if you wanted to, you could give a 50-minute keynote speech on what you do, telling that narrative. But yeah, that's step number 5, like living it and breathing it in everything that you do.
That's a crucial one. Like you said, a lot of people, they pay to get all of this figured out, and then they don't do anything with it. Right. And I've seen that happen over and over again. I'm like, I look back a year later with a client and I'm like, your website hasn't changed. And it's just so frustrating.
Or kind of like you end up with this amazing, powerful core message, but then for the website, like you just pick Like
Right.
you go to the heart of the message, like you pick like something in the middle of it and have that as like the first thing on your website. Like there is a reason that it's in that flow. And so it's really important to kind of think of it as, rather than kind of as a la carte menu that you just pick and choose the bits you like, thinking of it as like a flow, a story that like you either take the story or you leave the story. You can compress the story, but with, you know, by taking out the extra explanations.
Right.
But ultimately those key moments, the light bulb moments, need to be in that order, regardless of the collateral or the context that you're communicating in. And those are the, when clients do that, you know, those are the clients that really kind of squeeze every last juice out of their message.
Well, and like you said, it's like a book. So if you just take one chapter, it's not going to make sense.
Yes.
Right. And then you'll say like, oh, the messaging didn't work. No, you have to have the whole book. You can't just put chapter 5 out there and think that it's going to work, you know.
And usually what happens, and this is really tempting as a business, you know, when you're in the business, there is the illusion that the most important chapter is the part where we talk about what we do and our services.
Right.
So if they're pressed for space, or if they're pressed for kind of, you know, whatever, they will pick the chapter that talks about here's what we do and here's our value pillars and here's how it works. But you know, that's going down that storyline positions you as the hero and your audience as, you know, you're the one being saved. Basically, we're going to come in and save you. If you start with yourself, it basically positions them as the victim, and no one who's ever going to pay you or kind of ever going to do anything proactive with your business sees themselves as a victim. Everyone is the hero of their own story, and they want you to be the guide, which is why a narrative always starts with them and their pain, and then goes into you. So it's that illusion is something to really look out for. Is, are we tempted to just dive straight into talking about what we do because we're like short for space or short for time? I mean, I recently went to my first ever in-person business event because my work is all online, and I had the opportunity to create my first ever like business cards, like physical business cards. And most business cards that I know is like, hey, this is the business name, here's my name, here's my contact details. But I was like, how can I just integrate just a tiny element of that, my narrative, even into the business card? And then I had, you know, so what I ended up doing was I just had a little mini headline that said, you didn't build an amazing business just to do a meh job at talking about it. And then like, and then just a little explanation underneath it, kind of messaging support for groundbreaking businesses. And then, so it's like, even in those 2 lines, there is a tiny story happening, which is you're creating this sense of empathy. Like you shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't be in this position where people aren't seeing the amazingness of your business. Here's what I do, and then contact details. Like this is what I mean by you can shrink or expand the story. The key aha moments are still there, but you know, you can do it in like something as small as a business card.
That's really great. And you know, I think it's really important for people to realize, like, like on your website, that's where you get to expand and go into more detail. But you can tailor it down and still keep the core essence of the message, right? And that can feel difficult for some people, but that's why it's great to have, you know, people like you that can help guide people through that process. Because I mean, no one wants to pay you to feel like a victim, right? And have you be the hero. Like, I mean, people don't want to do that, right? They wouldn't
even get to the point where they pay you. Like, is, you know, a prospect wouldn't resonate with your message if you're positioning, if it's like me, look at how amazing we are. And this is kind of why most websites don't convert at all.
Right.
It's, you know, it's a shop front that makes them look good and feels, you know, it's good for their ego, but doesn't actually generate clients actively.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. Is there anything else that you haven't shared that you'd want to share or want to sum up before we end today?
I mean, I feel like that's been like a very condensed.
It was great.
Like, I feel like we've packed a lot into that. So, I mean, I would just say, when it comes to your messaging, just a really great tip is to start rather than kind of, it's very tempting to start sentences with kind of adjectives, but actually if you can start your sentences with verbs, like active verbs, like organize your documents into kind of whatever, if you can start it with an active verb rather than kind of something like let me think of an example, like seamless integration of your documents or whatever.
Right.
It just kind of, active verbs can feel a lot more just digestible for people. Imagine how might I say this point if I was standing at a barbecue next to my prospect? Like, how might I explain it? I'm not going to say seamless document organization. So just active verbs, speak human. You don't have to sound fancy, and speaking human doesn't make you look any less professional.
Totally. That's a really good tip. And sorry, man, my throat's all weird today. But why don't you tell everyone real quick where they can find you online, so they can connect with you and get some help if they need it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. So Alara Vural. There's not that many Alara Vurals out there, so it should be too hard. But if you struggle, my profile picture is me roaring.
And I'll have it in the show notes, so don't worry. I'll have the links there. You guys can find it all there.
Or website, alaravural.com. And then just reach out to me. What I do is kind of have a free messaging review, so we can get on a half an hour call and also sometimes run some webinars as well. So
perfect. And you have that worksheet. I'll make sure to put that link when you send that to me. I'll put that link in the show notes. Well, so thank you.
There's two documents that will be
perfect.
One is just kind of is 5 steps that you can start to work on your message right now, and the other one we can put in the show notes is kind of the core message map.
That'd be great. That'll be really helpful for our agency owners to just start using those with their clients. Well, thank you, Alara. This was really informative. I love just the way you think through this. I'm a strategy person, so I'm like, oh, I see all the strategy in there. Love it. You did a great job. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Holly. Really, really enjoyed this.
Yes. And thank you everyone for listening to the Inbound Back Office podcast, brought to you by Inbound Back Office, plug and play back office support for your marketing agency. You can find Inbound Back Office at inboundbackoffice.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, which I'm sure you did, take a minute, leave us a review, and share it with other agency owners. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on our weekly episodes. Until next time.